Hello, everybody. Welcome to Pointed in the Right Direction book YouTube channel. Today is going to be a fabulous day. I can't believe everything that this lady is doing, and it's going to be interesting to hear everything ups, downs, all about life. And just to give a spill for my book before we hear about her books, Pointed in the Right Direction, your guide through the challenges of finger amputation. And also, you can get my book on Amazon, or you can also donate to my foundation, Jeff Giving a Hand, where we are educating the world about finger partial hand amputation. So with that, we are leading into this beautiful lady here, Staci Andrea. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm excited to do this. I'm excited to sit and talk to you today.
Yes, so you're an author. You
Yes.
have four
Ooh,
books
author.
out
I've been an author for a
currently.
couple years here.
Yeah, go authors. And but you had an accident.
Yes.
So, but you had it written books before your accident. So let's start with you telling about your accident. And then I want to hear a little bit about challenges of writing beforehand, because writing is a challenge, a
Yes.
big challenge, and then writing after. So let's hear.
Yeah. It's over a year and a half ago now, Memorial Day weekend. I'll talk about the accident first. We were on our family pontoon in Clear Lake, Iowa, and it was a gorgeous day of Memorial Day weekend. We were out there to celebrate. My daughter and son-in-law were announcing that they were having a baby boy, and so we were just thrilled. We had just parked out by some shallow water, which, if you know Clear Lake, it's a very shallow lake anyway. But we parked over by one of the beaches, and we had just met other friends and family out there. And one of the boats had parked right next to us. And so we had decided, well, we were going to get off the boat and walk over and talk to them. I don't know why. Maybe it's my age. I looked over the side of the boat and I normally just would have hopped in. And I thought, there might be rocks down there. I'm not so sure how shallow that is. I'm going to turn around on the side of the boat and just drop down in the water instead of just hopping out into it. And when I did that, I turned around and went to lower myself in the water. And my finger, I'll take my little prosthetic off. Um, my finger actually, I'll show you on my good finger now. But what had happened was my hand was on the side of the gate, and the gate that was open had hinges on it, super, super sharp. And so when I went down, my hand got caught, and so it ripped off my finger at about this level. So I didn't have a whole lot that was left, and then the whole thing was just hanging on the side. And of course, I didn't know it at the time, but I didn't realize how many tendons, ligaments, nerves this finger shares with your next finger. And so that had pulled down, and it was not pretty. And I was hanging from the side of the boat by my hand. I didn't know it at the time. And what frustrates me about it now is that is something with those pontoon gates that the pontoon companies have known about since about 2010, that all it takes is a $10 pinch guard kit off of Amazon to prevent it from happening. And had I known about it, every boat on that lake would have one, because I would have been out there yelling, saying, hey, listen, this can happen. What really made me panic is when you start looking into it. I'm an adult, and what it does to a child's hand in that gate is horrifying. It's more than just a finger that gets caught in those gates. And what was strange is when I was at the hospital, I'd have nurses that would say, so what happened? And I would tell them. And I actually had one male nurse who held up his hand, and he was missing two fingers. And he said, really, me too. I grew up in Wisconsin. Same thing had happened. It was just amazing the more you get into it. But anyway, so luckily I had dropped down in the water and just was hanging by my hand. And people on the boat then had to pull me back up and drop me down to get my hand unwedged. Luckily, at the time, I thought it was luckily, there was enough skin that was attached that it just was hanging on. And my husband, everybody jumped in the water and they kept my hand up because the one question everyone kept asking, of course, was, did that touch the water? Because if that touched the water at all, they weren't even going to attempt anything. The bacterial levels and everything are just so gross in a lake. And so it was by the time it happened, to the time I got over to our local hospital, it took about 45 minutes. After they had to call the hand surgeon in, because of course he was on call. We live in a smaller area. They're not just there all the time. And I was amazed that he even tried to reattach it because I had broken that thing in so many different places. And he was amazed when he had kind of laid the finger back out and started poking around. Somehow I managed to still have feeling in the detached tip of my finger. So there was a hope that he'd be able to reattach. So after 5 hours from when it happened, I had the reattachment surgery. And it was just held together by pins, and it wasn't pretty. And he put it back on. And then with hope that it looked good because it kind of had a little dusky color to it, but it was pinking up. It didn't look terrible. But over the course of the next 6 weeks, it started to die off within days. And then it just became it was a frustrating time for me, and I didn't understand at the time what they were looking for, because in my brain I'm like, well, why don't you just take it off? Why don't you take it off? And they kept saying, well, they're looking for it to declare itself. They're looking to see how far down it's going to actually reject, what all they'll have to take off. So eventually the entire thing did not work, and I had to have surgery and have it taken off. But the creepiest part about that, and I'm sure a lot of people who've been through it totally understand, they kept telling me, okay, but you still have to keep it clean while it was still attached and dying. And I thought, ugh, why do I have to keep it clean if you're just going to take it off anyway? So it was a constant having to clean this finger that looked like a mummy and had shriveled up. I was terrified I was going to knock it off and it was just going to fall off my hand at that point. So anyway, then I had the second surgery. I had the second surgery to remove it. And at that point, then I was left with, it was about, just not even like a third of that lower area was about all that was left. So it was just kind of a short, small little, I called it a little nub. And at first it started to heal really well and everything looked pretty good, until maybe 3 weeks later, after some of the stitching and everything had come out, the bone then pushed back through what was left on top. So then I had to have a bone shortening surgery, which, looking back on it, I wish I would have asked more questions about that surgery, because the way it was performed was an in-office procedure without an anesthetist. And it was a gripping the chair. If I had known, I would have said, no, I want to be put on, can't do this. But you get through things you never thought you'd be able to get through. So then they, stitched the skin and everything back up again. I went on about life. And within 2 months after that, the bone pushed back out through the end again. And at that point, I developed awful, painful neuromas all over the stump that was left. And so I was avoiding using that hand at all cost. I got to the point where the muscles in my arm were sore because I just was clenching it to myself all the time, terrified to bump it on a counter, scared to death and to this day, I still will have like a flashback of I get queasy at the thought of putting my hand in a bag of like shredded cheese, just because the thought of that plastic rubbing up against the side, you just remember it. It's a core memory that doesn't go away. But anyway, so I had got to that point and was told by one of the local surgeons, well, one option is just to leave it as is and just go on with it the way that it is, or we can look into some other options. Well, it just so happened that my son-in-law's mom was a scheduler for Dr. Rizzo, who's one of the top hand surgeons over at Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. So she said, you know what? He's so great. Just listen to what he has to say. Maybe he'll give you some options. So I went to see him, And one thing that he said to me that will always, always, always stick in my mind and my heart and why I love him so much is when I sat down and I told him my story of what had happened up to that point, he first looked at me and he said, I am so sorry for what you have been through. And after that, my knee-jerk response was, oh, but it's just a finger. I'll be okay. And he looked at me and he said, you have to stop that. He said, and I tried to argue of, but I'm on these amputee boards and people have lost arms and legs and this is just a finger. And he stopped me again and he said, would you stop saying that? He said, you have had a loss. And it's learning to mourn that loss and how to move forward and stop putting yourself so low on caring about what has gone on. You had a loss and you need to deal with that. And then his second question to me was, why are you fighting to hang on to what's left? And at the time, I hadn't really looked into ray surgery very much. And when he first brought it up, it terrified me because the way it was explained, the way, we're going to take the bone down to the level of the wrist. And I just couldn't wrap my head around that. And so when he asked me, why are you trying to hang on to this? I didn't really have a good answer other than I was just terrified. I was terrified of, we've gone this far, this many surgeries, you've gone through recovery and PT and OT and oh my gosh, what's that process? And then I think somewhere in the back of my brain, I was also kind of terrified of, when I first lost my finger, the surgeon said, we think this will be okay. And then that didn't work. And then you do another thing and we think this will be okay. And in my brain, it was kind of, okay, well, what if for some reason we get this done and it's not okay? How far do we keep going? What? I was just caught in this cycle of, and then what? And then what? And then what? But when I really sat down and I looked and we talked about it and you realize you're not even using that hand. And it was I'm right-handed. It's my right hand and you're not even using it because it hurts so bad and you're terrified to do anything with it. So why are you hanging on to what is left? So after seeing some photos of other people that he had helped and kind of talking to some other people and hearing their stories, it turned into okay, I think I can do this. I think I can do this because at that point I had already checked into when I had the little bit of a nub that was left, I checked into some different prosthetics and things because they had asked, did you want to, consult with prosthesis places? And I did. And for the most part, I just didn't even at that point have enough of a level left to do much with. And then when I started thinking about and talking to places, okay, if I have this ray, what's out there? I mean, I could possibly have a glove made that had something just on the side to make you feel better and things like that. But I actually had one prosthetic company say, well, after you have the ray surgery, we really don't have anything out there for you for what you want it for, but we'd be, happy and willing to try to come up with something. But looking into that, to come up with something that they haven't done either, that's not a cheap thing, and you don't know what if you're gonna like
No.
what's coming in the end anyway. So I had kind of at that point decided, okay, we're just gonna do the ray. Whatever it's going to be is going to be, and I just will deal with not having a finger at all afterwards. So the ray surgery, ray resection went beautifully. It healed so great. That surgeon, just an absolute blessing. He knew I was terrified of having stitches removed because that was always, I've just been a big baby about stitches, even before this happened. And when he found out how terrified I was, and the doctor and the nurses that I had had previously, the surgeons were fabulous too. But when he found out how terrified I was, he came and he sat with me and he picked out the stitches one by one himself and sat there for an hour and a half. And I thought to myself, this is why this poor man is always late running to his appointments. Because he's just willing to do it. He's willing to listen and to be present and to treat you like a human. And so that was an amazing experience with him. And then after that, I should back up though, before we keep on with that. Right after I had the loss for the very first accident, they retouched the finger. My hand was, of course, all wrapped up and I couldn't see anything as we were waiting for it to declare how far it was going to die. The first thing I did is I came downstairs to where my computer is because I was in the middle of writing a book. And I decided, well, I got to keep going because I had 6 weeks that I had to recover and I couldn't just stop. So the first thing that I did was take the mouse and put it in my left hand that was all wrapped up. And if that was not the strangest feeling on earth to be using your non-dominant hand trying to control something else. So it started there. It just started with the force of, okay, we did this and now life has to move on. And how are we going to do it? And so I just started grabbing things with that hand as I could. And after the ray resection was done and all the neuromas were gone, I was left with my ring finger. From the accident alone, I had so much damage to the nerves that it doesn't always work really well. And there's some nerve damage to that one. But the nerve pain and things that I was having from the neuromas, of course, was gone because the ray resection was done and it removed all that. They did warn me at the time, though, that it is also possible for those neuromas to keep following down that nerve line and reform further down. And I'm lucky that so far that hasn't happened. So I've been really excited about that. But then after my hand had healed and I was back home and had told my dad, yeah, because he had asked me a couple times, well, how come, what do you think that you need something for? Why do you want a prosthetic? And I said, well, a couple things. One, I really miss painting that fingernail because I love my nails, I love jewelry, and it just felt like something was missing. And the second part of it is when I was typing after my hand had healed, I found that when you're typing and you no longer have that pinky, your whole wrist kind of lists to the side without that pinky being there. And so my normal job, not my writing job, but my normal job during the day, I type all day there too. And really quickly I was figuring out something's got to happen or I'm going to end up with carpal tunnel in my wrist and destroy other things too. And he said, well, have you looked into it? And I said, yeah, Dad, I looked into it, but now look, I don't even have a nub. There's nothing. There's no residual anything left anymore. And he's like, huh, okay, let me think about it. So 48 hours later, my dad showed up at my doorstep and he said, I got it. And I said, you got what? And he said, I wonder if I have the original one. I think I do. And he said, well, it's been driving me nuts, Stace, that you're telling me that this is all you want is something for this reason and this reason. And he goes, it's not that difficult of a design. Now, my dad used to be a space shuttle launch pad manager for NASA. So his brain works a little differently when he's out there.
He's an engineer.
Yes. Or like Dr. Rizzo at Mayo, when I first told him about all of this that's going on, he laughed and he looks at me and he said, is your dad a farmer? And I said, no, why? He goes, because farmers make do with the pieces that they have and they make it work. Like, he has the same mentality. So he showed up at my house and he had developed the first one that was made was actually made out of pewter. And it's this one's all blinged out with a fingernail, but I'll put it on so I don't have my tracers or anything on with it. But this was the first one. Is it?
Okay. So it's a ring attachment that's on your ring finger that attaches it.
Yep. So that was the first one. It was just those two rings that attached. And it was great. And I liked the weight of it because in your brain, it's amazing what your brain does when it thinks something is still there. And I noticed that even while I was wearing that one before he was redesigning anything else, it was a realization of, hey, wait a second, the phantom pains that I was having in the side of where that finger used to be, I'm not having those anymore. And I attributed to that to my brain thinks it's there. There's that little bit of weight. And when you look at it, it's moving with your other fingers. And so that pain is going away. So it was amazing to me. Plus, when I had it on, it didn't allow my hand to go like that on a keyboard. It had to stay upright. So that was where it started. And then from then, he just kept working on it. And he working on it. And he went out and did patent searches and tried to find anything. And there wasn't anything quite like what this was. So then he got into the world of 3D printers and designs. And that's when it just really kind of started taking off. So now we've got, and of course, me liking to accessorize, everything comes in multiple colors. And I told him, Dad, I want to do a nail. So this is my gold one. So now what we ended up doing is it's also held in place on the top with a top ring.
Okay.
So that when you're moving your hand, it's
perfect.
Your ring finger is doing.
Yeah.
and your brain thinks that it's there,
eh,
and that
eh,
you're getting that little bit of weight so that your hand, you're going through the motions, you're doing things that you normally are doing, and it just does something. And the fun thing, so then he started making these. So then I was on some boards and had some people that I was talking to reach out, and they're like, well, that's kind of flashy, Do you have them in like a normal skin tone? I'm like, oh yeah, we could do that too. So this one is another one. This is just the normal color, just a flesh.
hmm,
But and they're all cut with a nail bed so that you can do fingernails or whatever you want.
eh,
But then we sat and started thinking about the whole thing. And what got to me was, and when I was talking with my surgeon in Mayo, this is my silver one. This is the one kids like that one because then it's like,
bling bling a little bit.
and the nail. I mean, come
Yeah,
on. And
I have nails also.
see, no, so you weren't painted. What are you doing there?
I'm waiting for my great granddaughter to get a little bit older,
And let
and
her do
then I'm gonna let her paint them however she wants.
it.
You know, so be it.
You have to. Well, and then
Oh yeah.
thinking like with these, okay, if you made them cheap enough where people could just buy them like you're accessorizing an outfit, something to make you feel good, something to trade on and off, what if you could take it one better and you only charged enough to cover the cost to be able to produce and make the rest of them to provide them to kids for free? Because kids are, I feel everybody, adults, it's one thing to try to navigate in the world like this. Kids are different in that in their little social circles in their world, they're mean. Kids are mean. I mean, adults are mean too. I've been through it,
Mhm.
but kids are horrible to each other. And what was interesting, and when I started making these, my nephews are big into making, they make sharks, they make all kinds of stuff with their little 3D printers. And one of them took one of the fingers to school because he was showing these other kids. He's like, check this out. It's like a robot. It's so cool. And these kids are like, that is the neatest thing. And I started thinking, oh my gosh, it would be a way for these little kids, to be like, look what I have. It's so cool. It's so fun. And so then I told my dad, okay, so then what we have to do, it's got to be like Ninja Turtle green fingers, Barbie pink, all the fun things to kind of make it cool. So, and the other fun thing and why I love wearing it is before I was not only very guarded with my hand because I was scared when it was healing, but I was also to a point of you get a lot of looks, of course, where people are scared to ask you about it. And with the story of how I lost my finger, I wanted to tell everybody about it because I'm trying to keep it from happening to as many people's fingers as humanly possible. And I noticed, like you had said before when we were talking, when you put that on, there's something that happens in my brain that clicks. I'm a complete. I'm good. I can go out. Let's talk about this now. Let's do it. And I've noticed when I'm wearing it, 9 times out of 10, people are more intrigued and excited and willing to look at it and be like, hey, what is that? Rather than just kind of looking at your hand and not saying anything because, you're not really supposed to ask. But I feel like, well, if I'm putting it out there all blinged up, that must mean she wants to talk about it, right?
Yeah, and I love that. There's a couple of things. So you've had 4 surgeries, if I'm correct, right?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. And I'm going to step back and I'm going to say, okay, we we are the hardest to fit, the finger partial hands,
Yes.
because every single one of us is different.
Yep.
Typically on arms and legs, if it's from the wrist and above, you are dealing with length. Maybe there's an elbow in there and stuff. And I'm not minimizing either one of those, but our hands, our fingers do so much. And again, every one of us are different.
Yep.
You're a pinky. I'm a 3 finger. I know 4 fingers. I know 2 fingers, 1 fingers, 5 fingers, 7, 8 fingers. You know, 10. I know people that have lost all 10 through sepsis and stuff. It again, is such a mental, because I
Yeah.
coined the phrase most used, least recognized.
Yep. Exactly.
Your fingers are the most used limb on your body, but we also memorize. Our primal instinct is bigger and better, badder, whatever.
Yep.
That animal instinct, a leg has to be much worse than fingers.
Ex-
And in my case, I've had 3 impairment ratings done on my hand, and total leg amputation, total body impairment rating is 40%. My 3 fingers, wrist damage and such, I come in total body impairment rating at 38%. I am
Mhm.
5% less a whole leg.
Wow.
But then the size comparison
Well, and it's not,
falls in.
yeah, it's not viewed the same, and it's not viewed the same.
And I get it. So I called, I've had 9 surgeries, 2 revision surgeries to my hand. My last one was to my ring finger. I called him Stubby.
Yes,
Um,
I know
but
that.
I I've been there because my first revision, it was 2 weeks from the time we set the surgery to the time of the surgery. And I knew the finger had to go,
Yeah,
but I was still giving up a part of my body. And that is so emotional.
it is. It is. And it's one thing in the beginning when it's an accident and you don't have a choice in it and you just lose something, you're just thrust into this world of, okay, fine, I'll just respond. But when you have to go through a surgery and say, okay, yes, I'm choosing that we're going to do this, that's a different mindset altogether. It is just it's a hard place to be. And it's hard to come to that, wrap your brain around. I'm telling you, yes, go ahead and do this. Take more of me. It's just it can put you down a dark road. I mean, it's a lot to deal with.
Oh, 100% agree there. Then, when I had my second revision surgery, same time period, 2 weeks from setting the date to the surgery, it's like, come on, let's get this date there. Let's get it over and done with, because I knew what I was gaining in the process.
Yes.
And, you know, again, we're all so different that you can't fault anybody any way, whether they try forever,
Yeah.
so to speak, to save something
Right.
versus giving something up.
Yes.
In my case, hindsight 2020 always is. I wish that my surgeon had taken me to this level right from the get go, the day of the surgery. Instead of 9 surgeries, I would have had 4, maybe 5 surgeries. I would have been so much further ahead,
Yeah.
both physically and mentally. And that mental challenge, no one, until you live it, you can't have, you don't have any clue.
No.
I've had a couple of conversations just this last week with individuals and stuff. 10 years ago, someone would be complaining about pain, fibromyalgia, or something like that. And I've been healthy all my life. And I just, I go, suck up a little bit. Yeah. Over the last 8.5 years since my accident, oh, it's humbled me so much. Living with pain 24/7, you don't know the mental bandwidth
Right.
that it takes just to work through
Right.
that pain.
It is
And
a lot. Well, and then even too, I used to look at people and you'd see someone who had, a wound that healed, or, the skin looks good, everything looks great, but you don't realize how much is still going on. Like with my hand, there will always be, like, the only way that I can explain it is it feels like someone's taking your thumb and just pushing so hard right into the center of your hand. And that's just become your constant. You're just used to
yeah,
that pain living there all the time. And I look back on people that I've known in life and you just think, ah, I could have handled that better. I didn't know. I didn't know you were in so much pain. I didn't know what you were really going through. And on the flip side of that, my poor husband now is like, anytime he hurts himself or anything and he'll go to whine about it, he'll look at me and be like, yeah, it doesn't compare. Never mind.
yeah. So I have a friend that's paralyzed, and we were having a discussion one day, and he tells me he takes gabapentin, and it caught me off guard. And I go, "Oh yeah, so why do you take gabapentin?" He goes, "I live with pain all day, every day, burning, shearing, shocking pain." And I'm just sitting there, and it took me back for a few minutes because, again, outward looking in, I just assumed, hey, his legs doesn't
I
don't
didn't feel
work. He
Yeah,
doesn't feel anything. So life's good, so to speak. No,
right,
he feels this pain. And that's the whole thing I'm trying to do here with this YouTube channel is getting out, sharing stories.
right.
There's a few stories I have coming up. I have an individual that's a friend that's a leg amputee, but she's also going to CPO school at the
Oh,
same
wow.
time.
Wow.
And so we get the viewpoint of, hey, how is it? And again, until you're living that, you can't say anything. I love your surgeon because I've heard too many other surgeon stories of, well, Gloria, an earlier person, she went in to get a prescription for a prosthesis from her hand surgeon. Her hand surgeon goes, "Well, I really don't think you're going to get any benefit from it. So why do you need it?" And she looked at him and she goes, "Hey, doc, you have 10 fingers.
Yeah.
What right do you have to tell me what I might want or like or need? You're not in my shoes."
Exactly. Oh,
And so we need to advocate uh, compassion and empathy for everybody because
yeah.
it's opened my eyes, and I look at individuals, and nowadays I just go, I haven't walked in your shoes, so I have no right whatsoever to judge or say anything derogatory
Right.
towards you. I have 100% empathy and compassion for whatever your struggle is. So, you've written 4 books. You wrote some beforehand, you've written some afterhand.
Yeah.
And I know what my challenge, because I could touch type before my accident, and now I'm missing 3 fingers. And the one thing you don't have with a prosthesis is there's no touch sensation.
Nope. You can't use
And
Yeah.
I will say the individual that might be in my situation, if they were to be able to touch type or
Oh,
play the piano
oh, yeah.
with a prosthesis on,
Yeah.
they're superhuman.
Yep. Yeah.
The mental bandwidth to, just position fingers into a position. and to be able to do a wrist flex or something to hit that key or what that
You do it.
it would.
Strangest thing is that I mean I was pretty proficient in typing before this all happened, and now when you're at the keyboard, I had to you're basically because I don't have a lot of feeling in that ring finger either. So it's pretty much these three that are doing all the that slows you down because where you thought the letters were, no, you're learning your touch, everything with those three fingers doesn't align with what your brain remembers. So you think that that middle finger is reaching out to touch that key. You're nowhere near it. But because it's what your pinky and your ring finger used to do, you got to go further. So that has been a challenge. And what I find, in the beginning, I kind of thought to myself when I was teaching myself awkwardly how to use that mouse with my left hand. In my brain, it was okay because when my right hand heals, then I'll go back to what I used to do, put the mouse back in my right hand and continue on as usual. But what the strangest thing of this whole thing, my left hand had gotten so proficient at using the mouse and it in my brain it would slow me down so much to take it back into my right hand and then use the mouse and stop and type and use the mouse and stop and type. So in that I've become very lucky that I've become ambidextrous with using that mouse, so that's been a good thing. But other than that, still I can't write with my left hand. It was so bad when my right hand was healing. I would take the pen and it would just be really slow when you had to do a signature because your brain doesn't I mean some people can do it, my brain doesn't work, it can't mirror how I'm supposed to be writing that feels completely backwards the entire time. So it took a while for my handwriting, and that's another part of it. When your pinky is gone, that was your fulcrum finger. You balance that when you write, you balance that when I'm using a knife. It changed the way I did everything. I just thought about it at work last week because I was cutting a lemon, and I don't have a knife here, but usually you hold a knife like this. Nope, now because I don't have that anymore and it's strange and the tendons. So you just find yourself with your finger on the top of that blade to balance, and you find yourself doing things that now I'm not even thinking about it until I pay attention to what I'm doing and go, oh, that's a weird way. And simple things, not even writing related, but I was washing out the bathtub last week and I don't know why I hadn't thought about it up to that point, but I went to put my hand missing the finger underneath of the faucet just to cup water and splash it up on the side of the tub. Yeah, no, can't do that. There's no cupping action with that hand anymore. But you find yourself just doing these little things and going, oh, and it amazes me that how fast, even though you know that it happened, you can recall the pain, you can recall all of it. When you get caught up sometimes in your day-to-day life and you're just living life and doing things, your brain kind of shorts out and forgets. Like I said before, like I'd be painting my fingernails real quick and all of a sudden skip over and go to that other nail. Oh, that it's gone. That's right. It's not there anymore. Just simple things that for half a second it allows you to forget about it. It's just odd. Very strange.
And that is so. Here's what I liken it to. They say that we do as much as 99% of the stuff we do every day, all day long, is done subconsciously in our head.
Creepy, but I believe that, but that's creepy.
And but then again, us that are missing our digits and don't have touch sensation, we have to rely on the other senses and
Yep.
stuff. And sight is the biggest one.
Yeah.
And I am all day long looking to, if I'm holding a plate,
Yes.
I can't feel it.
Yeah.
I feel a thumb, and my pinky is like your ring finger, very limited in range of motion and touch sensation and stuff. So I have to watch everything I'm doing, and you got to watch me eat,
Yeah.
especially stuff like ham and eggs. It's
Yes.
a little dance that I do. So the way I do it, typically, if I'm eating steak and such, the fork is in my right hand and I'm cutting with my left hand.
Okay.
And I just poke it and eat it, and that's fine. But I like scrambled eggs. And with wrist damage and such, I try and scoop up scrambled eggs with my right hand, and they're all over the table, the plate, and everything, and not in my mouth. So at that point in time, I flip the fork to my left hand and eat the scrambled eggs with my left hand. So things like that, mixed vegetables, beans and carrots and corn and such. So I'm doing this little song and dance with my silverware
And
to
use it
get through dinner.
But isn't it something how you just adapt to it? You adapt, and when you're in the middle of doing it, do you get to a point where you're just sitting down eating and it becomes you're not having to actually think so much about which hand you're going to use to do this with? Have you gotten to that point where it's just this is an egg,
It,
it's
it,
like this?
it every day is different. What's going on is different. Still to this day, I probably over 50% of the time will reach for the doorknob with my right hand.
Really?
And having only a thumb and pinky, well, even if my prosthesis is on, it gets in the way. I can't move the fingers. If it's a round doorknob, I can't position them well enough to grab it, especially if it's an older door the knob might be a little sticky or something. And then it's those stories in your head. When are you going to get smart enough and learn to use the hand that will open this door?
Yeah.
That is,
Lifetime.
again,
The other hand.
yeah. But I do use
Do you?
the left-handed mouse, and
Yes.
I've flipped the buttons so
Yeah.
that they work like the same fingers as the right hand would be. And
Yeah.
oh, I love it when a right-handed person comes and grabs my mouse and pulls it over to the right side, and then they're trying, especially if they're a computer geek.
Yes, that happens to me at work. Or IT will come in because I have something going on, and he knows enough that my mouse is sitting on the wrong side to him, and he'll grab it and start driving it around and just stop and look at me like,
Yeah, I'm getting you now.
oh, you thought you knew so much, huh?
Yeah, he goes, there's something wrong with your mouse. No, it works just fine over here in this hand.
Oh, that is so funny. True though. Oh, that is good.
But, there is that protective sense. Like early on after my accident, I'm now at the fast food place with the family. You get through eating and you go to throw the trash away. And what do? You walk up to the garbage can, you hit it with the one hand and push it in and dump the
Yep.
tray in there. Well, that first time I hit my index knuckle on that door and
Oh,
I was laying on the floor crying.
oh,
It hurt
oh my God.
so bad.
Mm.
And, you know, it still hurts. And, there's still a long time to get past that protection mode.
Yep.
Uh, you know, and especially, we all hit our funny bone, smack our hand or something, and you kind of shake it, rub
Yep.
it, walk it off type thing. When you've injured your hand and you deal with pain, and all of a sudden that pain level goes from a 5 to a 10,
Yeah.
and it throws you right back into that protective mode.
Yep. It does. It
And
does.
you talked about the tendons and stuff. Well, my fingers were pulled off.
Mm.
They got caught in a machine and it took the tendons clear from my elbows.
Oh.
And at the moment of the accident, The sound as my fingers were pulled off and the tendons were wrapped up in the machine was like the playing card in the spokes of the bicycle.
Yes.
That and that, that was my first few months, the nightmares that I
Oh,
was living with. I'd wake up within the middle of the night was that sound, and you got the taste, the smells of that whole day circling around. And I went through my trauma counseling and got over all that. I went one night and met one of my coworkers there at work, 10 o'clock at night. Just the two of us are sitting there, and I turn the machine on and we sit there and talk for a half hour.
oh,
Then I engage the machine, and just it was a process, and I got past it and everything. And then just a couple months ago, I I worked for the same company for 8.5 years after my accident.
wow.
We were starting a piece of equipment up one day, and that was part of my job, was to go around for startups. And they pushed the button to start this machine, and it had a rub. And soon as it started up, that sound, and I'm like instantly back at that moment, and I'm looking at the operator going, shut it
Nope.
down now, shut it down now. I go walk away.
Wow.
And we just don't know what's going to be that trigger,
Yep.
and we can go for years.
Yep.
And that's just part of life. you
Right.
know like going to grandma's house as a kid, and you walked in and she's making a pumpkin or apple pie or cinnamon bread or whatever it be.
Yep.
And that was just that smell you had at grandma's house. And come the holidays, you go to a friend's house, a family member's house, and you walk in and you have that smell again, and you just all of a sudden you're back at grandma's house as a little kid.
Yep.
It's so weird how those things, our mind controls us.
It is. There's a feeling, this is going to sound, well, you'll understand. When I was in the ambulance and that finger was just hanging there, they didn't know really what to do, what to do with it. So they took it and they put it in the palm of my hand. And then they wrapped my hand with gauze. And
Mm-hmm.
I remember laying in that ambulance and I would just, I gag. And the ambulance, one of the paramedics back there would say, oh, are you okay? I can give you something for the nausea. And I'm like, no, it's just, I could feel that my finger was in the palm of my hand. And then what made it worse, and so it just made me gag. But what made that worse is that's where they pretty much kept it over the course of the next 5 hours. Even when my hand was in saline, I was still, it was just, there was no place else to put it. So
Yeah.
my biggest fear was, oh my gosh, when my daughter has this baby, is he going to go to put his hand in the palm of my hand? And I'm instinctively just going to go, I'm happy to say it didn't happen. She had him, it was fine. He touches my hand, I don't gag. So it's
Eh,
good. But at any second, I can tell you exactly what that feels like, and it'll bring back that whole thing again. I absolutely. It's how those memories pop back and how certain things of the day of the accident don't ever leave your mind. Just certain things are always there. I can, tell you what the lake looked like, what the ambulance driver smelled like. I mean, it's odd the things that your brain hangs on to in a traumatic
it,
experience.
it is. And, you know, I, I'd say that I live with pain, and some might call it phantom pain or whatnot. But then I say I have phantom sensation. And The most frequent one for me when it happens is my index finger, because at the time of the accident, my finger was stretched out like that.
Okay.
And I will typically, when it happens, is after I'm working out or doing something where I've done a lot with my arms and I got a lot of oxygen, adrenaline, blood flow just pumping through. And I'll get this sensation that my index finger's sitting out
Ugh.
there, just like this ET go home type. And it's like, okay.
Well, the pinky that's not there. I get one where I could tell you it feels like intense pain right in where my cuticle used to be. Like if you shut your eyes and I had my hand just sitting on the table, I can tell you the exact spot where that finger is and right where that pain is. And that just always blows my mind, you know?
And, I almost want to bet because I have similar ones with mine that that is where the initial accident started to happen. It probably pinched right there at
Yep.
the start.
Oh,
And
and my brain knows that.
oh, yeah, yeah,
Oh,
a split second.
it's so strange. It just comes out of the blue, out of nowhere. And then when it happens for half a second, you're like, oh, my finger. And then no finger. Yeah.
Yeah,
And it's painful. You feel the pain just like it was really happening.
yes. So, what do you want to tell people
Oh,
about life?
everything. Biggest thing too. Until you're put in a situation, you don't know what you'll do. And the accident that I'm in, in comparison, I mean, you don't want to compare yourself to everyone else. And there's huge things going on in the world and things, but you have so much more immense strength than you even realize you are capable of having until you put in certain situations. And I just think it's important to own that and to realize that use it in other aspects of your life when you think, oh, I don't know, am I good enough? Can I do this? I do it with my writing and everything. And now with the Fix a Digit company, why not? You got one life. So why not? If you're going to go after it, if you don't do it, somebody else is going to do it. If you don't write the book, somebody else is writing their book. So just do you and put it out there because you don't know what can happen. And the other cool thing I like to think about in my writing in the Fix the Digit company and like what you're doing, you don't know how you're impacting other people. And I was book
Oh,
signing and I had a girl come up to me at a book signing at over at the surf ballroom in Clear Lake. It was really cool over the holidays. They had a big holiday bazaar thing. And this gal comes up to me and it was this woman walked up to me and she said, my daughter wanted to come today just to see you. And I was all excited and I turned around and here is this high school gal that I had met before. And she got up out of a wheelchair to walk over to where I was. And the story behind this girl, um, she goes by the pen name of I.R. Miller, and she's absolutely amazing. She's a high school senior this year, and she has had some difficulties medically in her life, where she's been having to go through all kinds of treatments and things. And she came over to me and she's just telling me, I've been watching the journey and watching everything you're doing. And I looked at this girl and I knew her backstory. She's got 2 books on the market right now. She's self-published and she writes in the fantasy genre with a twist in that she includes neurodivergent characters in her stories. And when she was sitting there talking to me, I just looked at this gorgeous, smiling girl with everything in life weighing that kid down and all of her health issues she's going through. And I said, you're handling this so well. I'm so proud of you. I'm asking her how her books are doing. And she's talking about writing another book. And she just looks at me out of nowhere and she goes, what choice do you have? And it just,
well, we do have two choices.
oh,
We can crawl in the hole,
Right.
or fight through.
Yep. And her theory,
And
she's just fighting. What else is there to do? And it just blew my mind. Just, at 17, I think she's 17, 18 years old, just her outlook on life and just stuff piling on her and her health and this and that. And she's just blazing a trail and moving forward anyway. She's writing her book, she's out there doing it. And I think it's just amazing, just the resiliency of people.
yes, and that's what I try to advocate for. I do uh, hundreds of peer support calls. I know people around the world. And my biggest thing is to get out. Uh, Life isn't easy. We struggle and stuff. And there's moments that, especially on social media, we're all painting the pretty picture of what life's all about. You're an author and have 4 books and life's good. But then there's the moments when the storm's coming through and my hand hurts to no end that I just want to sit and cry about it, that no one sees.
Right.
And, only our family members, but also we need to learn to talk to our family members and let them know what we are feeling, not holding it in, not sucking up buttercup.
Yep.
We all, I hope to educate that we all need empathy and love and compassion for everybody. And again, because none of us have walked in anyone else's shoes. You know, um, it might be an individual that lost a husband or even a wife through a tragic accident. And, are they left raising kids? I have friends. One friend, her husband passed away and she left with 5 kids. The youngest was 11 at the time. Another friend had 6 kids when her husband passed away. Most of them were out of the house, but still, you don't know what you don't know. So let's
Right.
just have compassion and love for everybody.
Yeah, exactly.
And get her books. I will include um, some books that are very interesting.
Yes.
Very interesting.
Well,
I
say
want to say it might have a little bit of a dark side.
I like
Um,
so it's I write psychological thrillers, but my intent is to pull back the curtain on the perfect family down the street. My tagline that I always like to tell everybody is perfection is just an illusion and we all have ghosts. And so that is what I try to do in all of my books. You might think that little family next door looks perfect. They got stuff going on. So
oh, 100%.
so that's pretty much what I write about.
Every family has some skeletons in the closet. And I've been caught off guard by
And
my own family
yes,
going, what?
happen.
How long has this been going on?
Yeah.
Or,
Yep. Well, actually, when you were talking about, be willing to talk to your family about what's going on and be willing to voice when things are going wrong and the illusion that social media puts out there. When I started writing a few years ago, the only reason that I ever went back to writing is because before my accident, I had gotten into a really dark space in my life. And it was a time of, I was in my early to mid 40s. My kids had graduated or were graduating high school, empty nest. But then there was also a lot of just issues going on as far as my kids and things they were dealing with and was I doing in life. And I actually just started journaling because I liked to do that as a kid and it made me feel better. And so I started journaling. And then when I started journaling, I would start talking to friends. and saying, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think? What's going on with you? And I found that the more you found that, hey, she's having problems with her kids too. Hey, his wife isn't so nice to him just all the common day-to-day things that go on in homes, it makes you feel so much less alone. And then I kind of turned that into, well, hey, there's a story here in these journals. There's some stories of people I know that is going on, and how what can we do with that and build off of it. So really, that's where the whole writing career took off, was just taking everyday problems of everyday people and kind of magnifying it. And yeah, sometimes they take a darker turn, but but it's a form of therapy. It's good.
Yes. So thank you very much, Staci. This has been
Ew.
such a fun time.
Yes,
And
great.
again, I'm going to put show notes of your books and stuff. And do you have a website for the fingers?
We do. I believe it is launched. It's fixadigit.com. So it's fixadigit.com.
Okay.
We'll see any new stuff that I do or any fun things on there too. And then I also have an author website at staciandrea.com.
Okay. Text me those addresses so I can get them in show notes. And again, thank you for a fabulous interview here.
Well, thank you very much. It was so much fun. Thanks for having me, and I hope we can talk again.
Yes.